this video situated. Okay. It's good enough, I guess. It's a little different when we're live. Okay. So, welcome. So, I did votes on what you guys wanted to do for live videos, and you said that you would like a live video that is, just Bible studying. So that's what we're gonna do. Hello, Carol. Let me know if you can hear me okay. I'm using a new mic, so hopefully that's going fine. So I did a poll, and people voted to do a live Bible study on the book of Galatians. So that's what we're gonna do. And we're going to be using this spiral notebook. So the first thing that we do is, I noticed that Galatians does not have that extra note page. If you watched my last video kind of showing about this spiral Bible, so some of the, like this, it'll have like a notes page, and I thought that's great for the background information. So this one doesn't have it. That's okay. I'm just going to tape in the background information page. So that's what we're going to be doing. Let me see. So okay, so this is just going to be a live. I'm just trying to share this link so other people can, go with it. So right now we're going to be going live. So I'm probably going to just take one of these like dot grid papers and like just tape it in. But because I'm still gathering all the information, I'm just going to okay, thank you guys for responding that you can hear me. Because my phone is recording, I'm not going to be able to see your comments, so I have my laptop over here to look at your comments. Okay, so sorry for the slow start. I was just trying to share the link for the live places. I know there's no announcement for this. I wasn't planning on going live tonight, but my kids are not here, and that's the best time to go live. Okay, so we are doing, apparently dropping everything off my shelf. Okay, so I'm trying to find my, I don't know why I don't have my things. I normally kept in easy reach my guide or whatever. Well, I can't find it, but I think I have it on my tablet. So for the background information, we're just going to be following my how-to guide to look at the questions for background. So like, who's the author, where was it written, who were the recipients, all that stuff. So I'm actually going, this will not be the final product, but I'm going to just move this out the way. So this is a live study, which means I have not done any of this already. That's what you guys kind of requested, that I just study with you live. And so that's what I'm going to be doing. So background information first before we jump into the scriptures. So I'm going to try to finish the background information in this video, but I don't know how long that's going to be. So I'm just going to grab a pen here. And like I said, this is not the finished product. This is me gathering all the information before I create the finished product. So really what I do is, obviously, I look for, sorry if my chair squeaks. I look to the scriptures first for some of the information, like who the author is and stuff. So as you can see here, Paul, an apostle. So Paul is the author, and we'll look into like other things, like do all people think that Paul wrote it, or whatever the case may be. I'm sure some of the study Bibles and stuff that we look at will show that. So author, so who is this written to? It says, unto the churches of Galatia. So this is in verse 1:1. And then I write to whom. And hello, Beverly. Thanks for coming on live with me. So we're just studying Galatians, getting the background information, following this. Let me know if y'all have some trouble seeing or whatever. So to whom? So it says, unto the churches of Galatia. So what I'm going to do is churches of Galatia. So one thing I also want to do is I want to figure out what is Galatia, where that is, and we'll look into that as well. Let's see. Where was it written? I want to say that Paul says where he was writing from in like the last chapter, but I'm not entirely sure. Yeah. You see, well, hold on. How large a letter I've written unto you in my own hand. Maybe that's what I was thinking of. I don't know. Could have been in another book too, that he tells in the last chapter where he was actually writing from. I want to say he wrote from Ephesus, but again, with the different books that I study, it's hard to tell. Yeah, I'm not seeing it at first glance, so we'll look at some study Bibles to find out. So where is this located? The literary style. So we can write the literary style. So literary style is an epistle, which means it's just a letter. If you don't know about biblical literary styles, I'd highly recommend that you study that. So an epistle is just a letter, and you can tell by the greetings, and then at the end, what is it called? Salutation. Is that what it's called? Anyway, he says goodbye and all that stuff. Words are hard, let me tell you. Okay, so let's see what else we can do. When was it written? So it says, who are the recipients? And then it also says who does that include? So we want to know, this is to the churches of Galatia, but does that mean it's mostly Gentiles? Is that mostly Jews? Is there a mixture? And where is it located? Things like that. So most of that we cannot figure out or have knowledge of through the scriptures themselves. So in between this video and the next video, make sure that you do read the entire book of Galatians. That's going to help as you study with me live. Again, I will have no study notes. Everything will be live. I don't know how long this will take. But so for now, I'm going to put this aside because we're going to be looking at some study Bibles and stuff like that. So I'm just going to be using my physical resources and some of my digital. So I do have this Faith, I think it's Faith Study Bible or something like that. I think that's what it's called. What is it called? The Faith Life Study Bible. So this is free app. This is like a newer app to me. So I'm just gonna, you gotta start somewhere, I guess, with your physical. So I'm gonna put introduction. And so what I do, honestly, is I just get all of my resources and I just, there we go. See how that works. A little bit of an awkward angle. See if I can move you guys down here. Sorry about that. There you go. It's a little better. Okay. So you gotta start somewhere. So I'm just using my physical resources, and I'm just going to be looking at the different information I can get from the different things. So I'm going to try to just kind of talk my way through it and stuff. So I want to know like who this is and where it is, like who this involves and where it's at. And then when was it written? So when is it written? Like I said, this is just notes for me. Let's see, when was it written? Oh, where was it written? If that information is available, obviously. Where written? Shorthanded. Let's see, where is it located? And then, of course, we'll have some background information. So I'm going to write that down here. Because background information takes a long time to, I think, gather or cultural information, not background, but culture. Which is really just the first century, but okay. So first thing, we're just going to dig into this first study thing that I have. And go from there, I guess. So let's see. I don't know how good these introductions are in this one because I haven't used this one. So this says Paul is the author, and the recipients are the churches of Galatia. And this says these churches were planted by Paul during his missionary journeys. But the churches' locations are debated. I think I have heard about that. So I do want to do research a little bit into that. So I'm just going to write that. So this says that Galatia was a region in Central Asia, which we'll look up in my Holman Bible Atlas. Let's see. So it's giving some about when he would have been writing to certain churches. If you go with the theory of that Galatia is in the southern part, the city's in the southern part of Galatia, which is recorded him in Acts. It just makes me want to get the Bible Atlas out. Let's see. So this is the Holman Bible Atlas. I love this thing. I think it's great. So we're going to look up Galatia, see what they got. Galatia 196. So I don't know, like, if y'all wanted the background information as part of the live, but I guess it helps you to see, like, how I get information and stuff, I guess. 196. So in this one, it shows Galatia as like this general area, but we kind of need something that's kind of like more zoomed in. 245. Okay, so this is a lot better. So this map is for Paul's first missionary journey. So, which is what he does here. And then Galatia is this area up here. So, you know, but it looks like it also can go down here, according to this map. So, he could be talking about the southern Galatia because Paul did visit these. So that's one option, like this is saying. So, let's see. Southern part. Cities of, let's see, Antioch and I cannot say these words, though. Cannot pronounce these. And this is mentioned in Acts 13 through 14. So I want to write that down because that is an option right here. And then if this is the case, let's see, Paul would have written to these churches between 48 and 51. So they're saying that it probably happened before or shortly after the council. I don't know where they're getting that information from, but so that's one theory. So I do like the study Bible that they give more than one theory, which I think is good. If you're looking for a good study Bible, you want to have them to give multiple theories. Okay, so that's one. So what's the other one? So I guess the other one is the northern part. Which they're saying that could be where Paul mentions he visited Galatia in Acts 16:6 and 18:23. Which means I need to find my smaller Bible to look at those references. I hope you can't hear that, like, ridiculous car in the background going across my street. So I use this Bible reading out and about, and also for cross references or references in general. So let's look up those references. So gathering background information, as you can tell, we're 20 minutes in and we still have like a ton of background information to look up. Let's see, Acts 16, 6. Now when they had gone through Phrygia and the region of Galatia, and were forbidden by the Holy Ghost to preach the word in Asia. So it says they went through the region of Galatia. So technically it could be up there, but then it says they couldn't go into Asia. So, I mean, it is, it's a possibility. Let's look at 18:23. And after he had spent some time there, he departed and went all over the country of Galatia and Phrygia. Can't say that word. In order, strengthening all the disciples. Where is he talking about? So I want to know where this location is. The Phrygia. I am not reading it because I don't see it on the map, on this map anyway. I wonder if I can look it up in the back, see if I can find it, because it's bothering me that I can't. Let's see, PHR 247. Oh, it's mentioned over here. But where? That is the question. Hmm. 267. So it says it's mentioned over here in this map as well, which is right here. So I can see it in this map. Oh, it was right there and I couldn't even see it. I'm so terrible at this. Okay, so Galatia and then whatever this location is. But then he says he couldn't go into Asia, so he couldn't preach into Asia. So, I mean, it seems more likely for the southern region just because he's hit those cities already. But I don't think it would necessarily have to be just that. In this case, Paul's letter would have been written during his second or third ministry. So if it is this one, it would be 49 to 57 AD is when he would have written it. But likely before he wrote Romans, which was written, they're saying, in the mid-50s. So they're saying that it's probably earlier, which would go with this as well. It says, regardless of the location, Galatian churches consistently mostly of non-Jewish believers, so it would be mostly Gentiles. So I'm gonna write that down. Mostly Gentiles. And this is why, for me, I think it's good to use multiple resources, whether that's a lot of different study Bibles or whether that is, different online resources. I mean, you could count this as an online resource because it's an app and it's for free. I was going to buy the Faith Life Study Bible in the physical form, but it was expensive and this is free. So, you do what you got to do. Let's see. So this says that the debate about the letter's recipients and the date arises because of the connection to the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15. Because that was a critical meeting for the church leaders settled the issue that dominates Galatians. So I've read Galatians, and it's all about grace and not having to keep the old covenant, the old covenant laws, and that non-Jewish Christians do not have to keep the Old Testament laws or the regulations. And that's what the entire book of Galatians really is about. It's about grace and not having to go back into that bondage that he talks about. I would still say that there is probably Jews, though, because without Jews, I don't see how. There's probably a minority, though. Yeah, you know, in Acts 15, if that's when the council happened, Galatia was probably written, the book of Galatians is probably written right after the council. Because it says Paul may be articulating the council's decision. Paul could also be offering the same viewpoint prior to the council. This would mean that Paul's description of his time in Jerusalem and Antioch likely correlates to Paul's time in Antioch, but not the events of Acts 15. That's difficult. I don't really care about the structure or the themes at the moment. So, So in Galatians 2, it does mention Paul, he did spend time in Jerusalem and Antioch. So, I mean, I don't think it's too important for me, anyway, for that. But this does give a good example of, this is the southern part of Galatia, and this is the northern part of Galatia. So... Okay, so when was it written? It's between 48 and 57 so far. So I'm going to go with the earlier one, kind of, I feel like, but we're going to put 51 or 49 to 57. So there's still more study Bibles that I want to look at. So I'm going to move that out of the way since we kind of got our picture of where that is. Okay, so I'm just going to pick random, what is the word I'm looking for? Resources. So this is the Haley's Bible Handbook, the new revised edition. This is, I think, kind of old, actually. Yeah, it's kind of old. I think this is 1965, but I don't know. Anyway, it's older. It was a gift to me, so I like using this. Like I said, I just, in general, like as many resources as possible. You get a lot of different information in that way. Sorry for the squeakiness of my chair hitting my desk. I'm going to move my chair down. Okay. So Galatia is in Central Asia Minor. So that is something that's mentioned. So this is the region of Paul's first missionary journey. So right there, it's talking about the southern part. Because if you saw, and man, I really should have marked this. What page number was that? Guess I could use all of these, but I'm going to go ahead and mark this. What? I'm going to go with pink. Okay, so pink is going to be Galatian color. So different, when I'm doing a few different studies, I like to mark them with the flag so I know. Okay, so anyway, so during his first journey, he went to these cities in southern Galatia. And so these, whoever did, I guess would be highlights, is saying that, by saying that it is the southern part of it, and including these cities. Galatia were the branch of the Gauls. So that's interesting. So that kind of goes into who is a branch of Gauls. That's a type of people. Originally from the north of the Black Sea, split off from the main migration westward to France and settled in Asia Minor in the 3rd century BC. Okay. So this does say mostly Gentiles. So this is saying that certain Jewish teachers came along insisting that the Gentiles could not be Christians without keeping the law. See, that makes sense. There is a minority of Jewish teachers, because without that, then the Galatians would not even know. We would not be having this conversation. So, let's see. Okay, so this one is saying for the date, is they're taking actually a later date. Paul had founded these Galatian churches about 45 to 48 AD. He had revisited them as he was setting out on his second journey about 50 AD, which now they're saying that these are actually the southern cities, not the northern part of Galatia. And then he also visited him again on the third journey about 54 AD. So the commonly accepted traditional date of the writing would be 57, which is the later date. While he was in Ephesus, Macedonia, or Corinth, shortly before he wrote the Epistle of Romans. So the other study Bible said that is before he wrote, I'm going to put that down, before wrote Romans. So this is where it says could be Ephesus, Macedonia, however you say that, or Corinth, where he written this from. I don't know. Some think probably was written about 49 AD, so that gives the early date. From Antioch, so this is the late date, and then the early would be Antioch. Soon after Paul's first return from Galatia, before the Jerusalem Council of 50. So the early one would be before the Jewish Council in Acts 15. So this talks about the Judaizers, which is the Jewish teachers that are trying to get Christians to obey the law of what was I saying? Obey the law of the Old Testament, or whatever, the Old Covenant. So leave that. So this is pink, so I know that when I want to look at this resource again, I go to the pink, and that will be Galatia, or Galatians. So let's see. I'm going to just look at this. I don't really use this, the Chronological Guide to the Bible. I got this, like, way before I was even actually a Christian. I like to look at it, but that's about it. I don't know how well. Let's find Galatia, because it doesn't like hold a ton of information. But 179. But I have gotten little nuggets out of it. So, like I said, I just like using as much. If I have it, why not use it? You know what I'm saying? That's not what I was looking for. 186. Oh, why is there a sticky note right here? Again, just marking this for later. Never know. Okay. Most crucial factor in dating the letter of Galatians is the relationship between the journey of Paul to Jerusalem, mentioned in Galatians 2:1, and the Jerusalem Council, mentioned in Acts 15. So, this is saying that if the decision of the council in Acts 15 had been common knowledge, then Paul would probably have used the council's decision in his defense of the Gentile freedom in his rebuke of Peter, which was in Galatians 2. So they're saying that it could possibly have been written before that. So this says that the destination of this letter to Galatia was a group of churches that Paul himself had founded. And they're giving references to Galatian. In Galatians, I mean. I keep getting messed up with Galatians. So, yeah. I need to just go ahead and mark Galatians in this Bible because I know I'll be using it for references. So I need to go ahead and mark it. There we go. So Galatians 1:2 just says, "Brethren which are with me unto the churches of Galatians." So that doesn't really. But though we are angels from heaven preach any other gospel. Well, he's saying that in verse 8 they're giving that Paul did already visit these churches, so as we have said before, so they've said it, so they've heard Paul say it before, so these are churches that Paul had to have founded. Although I don't think it has to be just these churches. All of Galatia benefit just like we do now. We benefit from the letter. And it's in chapter 4, it says, "I desire my little children of whom I travail in birth again unto Christ be formed in you." So that's kind of given the saying that saying that it is churches that Paul founded already. So I'm going to probably just kind of go with it is probably the southern region of Galatia, and the date was still kind of iffy. Let's see. The destination, his relationship reflects in chapter 4. Until the 18th century, most readers understood Galatia to be the territory in the heart of Asia Minor, whose boundaries included these things that I can't read. However, the book of Acts offers no record of Paul evangelizing in this northern Galatian area, apart from the brief hints which was also mentioned in the first study Bible that we did in Acts 16 and 18. The South Galatian theory understands Galatia to refer to the Roman province of Paul's day, which included, again, I can't read the names. Also included were the cities of Antioch, Derbe, and again, I can't read all these, which Paul visited in his first missionary journey in Acts 13 and 14. And I guess he also visited those in his other second missionary journey. Like, if you're not too, like, hardcore about it, I get it, because, like, it's not, to me, it's not going to be a huge deal about when it was written when we interpret the scripture, right? When we try to understand the scripture. I mean, this helps, obviously. You need to keep in mind, especially to who and stuff. But when was it written? Not to, and where, not, like, it's not, how do I say that? What's the word I'm looking for? It's not going to change the interpretation, I guess, of the scripture if we don't know exactly, like, where and things like that, if that makes sense, which I hope. Okay, so the next resource that I'm going to kind of get is this Life Application Study Bible by Tyndale. This is the KJV version. This is an older version. They have a newer version. This is an older version. This Bible was gifted to me, and I very much appreciate it. I'm gonna mark Galatians, with pink, so I can reference it easier next time. And so they do give a little bit of introduction in this. Let's see, purpose, author. So this says the southern Galatia that Paul founded. This is saying that it was probably written 49, so it was going with the earlier dates. So this was written to churches, so it's not written to one church, but in general, to the churches, and that's what they're kind of saying here. That's pretty much all this is giving. This goes more into doesn't give that much more information. Oh my goodness, I'm gonna have to move that. The next resource that I'm gonna be doing is the NLT Illustrated Study Bible. So, just so we know, you do not have to have all these resources that I have. I want you to know that you definitely do not need this many resources, especially, number one, as a beginner. And I know that study Bibles can be pricey. This is because I'm a Bible nerd and I save money to buy physical resources. I used to be an online person, and a lot of these things you can still find this information online for free. So you don't need these, just so we know. So, let's see. This Bible does have quite a bit of summary, meaning it's not really what I'm looking for. This doesn't have a timeline though. So they're saying the early date as well. before the council in Acts. So, Paul's the author. Galatians has always been recognized as a genuine letter of Paul. It harmonizes well with the account of Paul's mission in Acts and the other letters. Reflects Paul's conflict with Jewish Christians who sought to make keeping the Jewish law a necessary element of Christian faith for Gentiles. So, yeah. So this says to the recipients that some biblical scholars believe that Paul wrote to an ethnic group called Galatians, who lived in North Central Asian Minor and related to the Gauls and the Celts. So I got Gauls right here before. I'm also going to put Celts because I don't know if I'll research them on here, but I do want to kind of just read about them. I probably won't write anything down necessarily about them, but I do. You never know. Maybe in culture information that might. I don't know. Others believe that the recipients of Paul's letters were groups of churches within the Roman province of Galatia, a much larger area than the ethnic Galatia. The Roman province included in its southern districts all the cities that Paul visited in his first missionary journey, and Paul does not seem to have spent extended time in the ethnic Galatia in the north. And again, it mentions Acts 16 and 18 for the north. But I remember a different study Bible said that can also mean the southern. I don't know why they're saying that that is the northern references. I don't know why that is. They just keep saying that. We do have record of extensive and repeated missionary activity of Paul in the southern part of the Roman province of Galatia, which is in those cities. So he's saying that these, I do think that was probably from the cities that he was already been, because like it does say, we don't have much information on the northern. So this is saying shortly before 49, like it did in the other one. In 49 or 50, or sometime after the council, or perhaps also during his third missionary journey, which would be in the later date. So they're giving both. Let's see. Yeah, this is the way. This is a thick boy, thick Bible. This is kind of mentioning the difficulties of dating the letter between Acts and what Galatians 2 says. So they're saying that it might have been before. So yeah, they're saying that there's different beliefs, but could also, they're saying that what they really want to do is what they're taking is that he wrote this before the council in Acts 15. So, and then I like this with the study Bible is like for further reading, you can look up some of these resources if you want further reading about behind the text. So I don't really want to read any of this. It's not really what I'm looking for right now. So I'm going to put this up. Okay. So I'm grabbing these in no particular order. So this is the NIV Biblical Theological Study Bible. So as you can see, I have blue because I'm also doing a study, if you're following along, in Hosea, which I will hopefully be getting back to soon. We had some family things going on, so haven't been able to study as I have wanted to. Okay, so grab a pink little flag here. Boom. Okay. Author. Paul. So Paul's the author. So a lot of Paul's letters was not actually written by Paul. He had someone write down his words for him. And so like I said in the last chapter, I said he wrote down most of Galatians himself, which is interesting. So I like this. The year in which the Paul wrote this letter is disputed. So that's nice. They give you that kind of that debate that we've been looking at. I do like that they have a map in here too. That's nice because you can kind of see the different. I wish they would say that like this is Asia over here and stuff like that, but still good. So this is saying that he either wrote it in Antioch or Ephesians for the later date, even though they say it doesn't really matter about the date and where they wrote it. So it says Galatians in 3:1, which means that is that who he's identifying as? Is this Bible identifying as oh, foolish Galatians? He just says Galatians. It doesn't really give any more information. So in Paul's day, Galatia was a Roman province in the central region of what is now Turkey. Since it's included in various southern cities mentioned in Acts 13-15 as evangelized by Paul and Barnabas, many interpreters think the letter was written to believers in these cities, which makes sense. They say that these inhabitants of these cities were not ethnically Galatian. So ethnic Galatians were found further north, which would be the Gauls and the Celts. And then for that reason, that other interpreters think that the letter was sent to believers in the northern region, even though Acts never mentioned Paul's journey to the north. See, it says Paul, it's never mentioned in Acts unless Acts 16 and 18 are so understood, which is what these have done. So we've seen that some say that a few have said this is still mentioning the southern part, and then we have some saying that this is the northern part. So because the scripture doesn't say, you can't know exactly. Now, but since Acts is not an exhaustive account of all what Paul did, so they're saying that either one could be right, because it's true, Acts is not exhaustive, because it kind of just ends with Paul being in Rome. But when you think after he was let go in Rome, he visited some other places before he died. But and then I think some believe that he just died in Rome. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. Okay. I'm not really interested in the theme or the overview or the outline right now. We may look at those maybe when we start looking into the scriptures. I don't really know. It's kind of nice to glance at them, I guess. But okay. What resource should we look at now? Let's look at this, the ESV Study Bible. Okay. we're going to mark it so we can reference it later quicker. Okay. Author and Totter. The thing about the ESV Study Bible is like their introductions are like pages long, which is really nice. Okay, let's see. So there's a widespread agreement by scholars down through the ages that Paul is indeed the author, which is nice. Don't have to go through a bunch of heebie-jeebies, or I don't think that's the word, but you don't have to go through a lot to get who the author is. So the question of the date is relative to the questions of which Galatians. See, that's point. That's a good point. So the date just means on which Galatians it's talking about, which would also mean where it is written from, which I don't see any evidence on how they can even say where it's written. I guess just through Acts and where he would be during those periods of time, which is, now that I think about it, probably where they got it from. They're saying the main indicator is the lack of reference to the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15, but this is an argument of silence, and you can't really defend silence, so. '48 AD is a plausible date. Yeah. They're saying that it could be, they're kind of saying that it's probably the earlier one, but they're not giving a, like, concrete answer, because you can't know. Which is what the other study Bible said, that is like, you can't really know because of Acts is not, a exhaustive thing of what, Paul did. So, do you like this map? It does show southern Galatia and northern Galatia. So that's cool. Then it does give Asia and others. It's a little bit different, I think, than the other one that we saw in the Hallman Bible Atlas, though. It's very similar. So it does have a timeline. So if Paul wrote Galatians, you can kind of see it on the timeline right there at the early date. So I'm not really interested in the theme. Literary feature. Okay, so this is talking about the literary feature, which is an epistle. Galatian follows the conventions of a letter written in New Testament times. There's salutation, a body, greetings, and a benediction. Benediction, that's the thing that goes at the end. Not a salutation. Salutation is the beginning. Oh my gosh, get my words all mixed up. Anyways, so that's the literary features. I'm not really interested in the rest of that. That's the outline. Not interested. I am interested in ancient Galatia. Galatia was originally Celtic region in North Central Asia Minor, which is modern Turkey, which is what we have the Gauls and the Celts. So that would have been the Celtic. Let's see. I like this because it gives you historical, cultural information. It does say that Galatia kind of changed its boundaries, so that might be why it's showing a little bit different than the other map we looked at. So continue reduction of powers. So it says archaeological evidence indicates a combination of Hellenistic, Celtic, and Roman influence in the province of Paul's time, which makes sense. That's an interesting. Okay, so that's pretty much done with that one. So I'm probably not going to like make the finished thing like this, but I will write it out and finish it and then tape it into the book after I get all the information. So this is the NIV Study Bible. This I bought at a Carm store. So this is used. It has like markups and has markings in it and stuff. And you can definitely tell it's an older Bible. This is 1985. So this is definitely an older Bible. But it was a study Bible that I didn't have. And I think I bought it for like $1. So you can't pass that stuff up. You know what I'm saying? Can you tell me where you can buy a study Bible for $1, even if it is from the 80s? So I was like, score. Anyway, I also bought another study Bible. I think it's a Newer Life Application Study Bible, but I'm going to give that to my cousin. Okay. Author. Paul. No one's question is authorship. Okay, so it is giving the Northern and the Southern Galatian theory again. So I'm kind of just done with it. So it's either later or minor. So whichever theory you hold to, that's kind of like, you know, where you're at with it. So this is the Archaeological Study Bible, the new NIV. This Bible is actually out of print, but you can still buy it. This is actually one of my favorite study Bibles, just because of its archaeological and historical information, I guess. It's one of my favorites. Oh, show. Anyways, Apostle Paul's the author. The date depends on whether the Galatians were the northern part or the southern part, which they say the two different theories again. Written from Ephesus for the northern part. So this is north. This would be the south. So it says most scholars accept the Southern Galatian theory and the early dates written from Antioch. So Judaizers were the Jewish Christians who believed that a number of the ceremonial practices of the Old Testament were still binding to the New Testament church. So the Judaizers, which is probably what. So, I may do some like study on them. I don't know. Never know. Put that down though. Although I've read about them before. So this kind of gives a timeline, which is nice. Paul's conversion, Galatians. So Galatian is giving the earlier dates, but it does go in, so the early dates mostly on this. I'm really interested about the themes. So this has a little article about which Galatia. The Roman province in Asia extended from northern Asia, where the Gauls also where you get the word from Galatians, had settled in centuries earlier to South Central Asia Minor, which had been incorporated into the province at the end of the first century. So did Paul address this letter to the north, to the ethnic Galatians, or to those living in the southern part of the Roman province? So they does reference a few other articles in the Bible, in this Bible, writing in the Greco-Roman world. I do want to read that. So this is why I like this Bible. Although, hold on. Luke traveled in his first missionary journey. Although Luke did not refer to them as Galatian cities, they did belong to the southern part of the province. If Paul did write, this would have been one of the oldest documents of the New Testament if he wrote after his first journey. Interesting. See, it's mentioned again in Acts 16 and 18 that this was may indicate the northern Galatian. Y'all might be kind of done with this theories. So some scholars say that Galatians 2, when they mention Jerusalem, they're actually talking about the council of Acts 15, so that's new. And some say that, some scholars say that he wouldn't have mentioned Galatians if he wasn't not meaning ethnically. Guess we'll never know. Some interpreters argue that describing geographic location and ethnic groups, Paul would have used the same terms. So, most scholars hold to the South Galatian theory. There's no evidence or clear evidence that Paul ever evangelized the northern. I agree. I don't see in his I need to read page 1889. In his journeys of going anywhere towards northern Galatia. Okay, so we're gonna look at one more resource before we call it. Nope, maybe two. Okay, so this is the NRSV Cultural Background Study Bible. So it does come in another translation, but in my study Bibles, I try to get, if at all, some study Bibles don't come in different translations, like the ESV study Bible, it's literally for the ESV. But other study Bibles that come in a variety of translations, I try to get one that I don't have. So I do not have this translation, therefore, that's why I got this translation. Galatia. Make it a little sticky. Oh no, I'm running out of pink. I'm gonna have to find some more. Oh wait, no, I don't need, because I think that's all my stuff. Okay. So some say, so dating before or after, just depending. So some say that Paul is addressing the ethnic Galatians, which be the northern Galatians, because of chapter 3, verse 1, because it says Galatians. I would have to do a word study on that a little bit to kind of get a better understanding of that, but most specialists, including most specialists of Asian Minor, recognize that Paul addresses the residents of the Roman province of Galatia, including the regions near Pyrgia, which I cannot say. Yeah, I think I might have to go. So it does say 48, maybe early 50s. So, yeah, it gives about the same information that we have been getting. So, move that over. You know, something else I like to look at, I was gifted the World Book Encyclopedia, and this is from like the 70s, like I think early 70s. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, 1973. And I like to get these and read about, because they have some good information. So this is like would be the last research that I'm gonna probably look at. I'll probably do maybe a little bit more research just for myself. I can't spell, I don't think. Galatia, a region in Central Asian Minor, now Turkey. It was named for the Gauls, who were called Galatia by the Greeks. The Gauls crossed into Asia from Europe in 278 BC and overran parts of Asia Minor. Attalus, king of the Greek city, defeated the Gauls, forced them into that weird word Phrygia, later named Galatia. Galatia lived in the countryside. And frequently raided the Greek cities. The Romans defeated the Galatians in 189 BC, but allowed them to keep their tribal government. The Emperor Augustus named Galatia a Roman province in 25 BC. A famous inscription written by Augustus to describe his deeds was found in Galatia's capital city, Angria, today. I can't say it. The Apostle Paul visited Galatia twice and wrote an epistle letter, which is right here. The 9th book of the New Testament, probably written in 52 to the churches of the Roman province of Galatia. So that's interesting. Yeah. So I think, I don't think I need to mark this. So, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all. So for like cultural information, I am probably going to just do a little bit of research of the 1st century and maybe write something down for that. But for the most part, this pretty much gets all the information that we need. So it just depends on if you're going to go with the southern or the northern, which gives you the dates and where it was written. But like I said, and who, mostly Gentiles. There are some Judaizers or Jewish teachers that are trying to go against the New Testament grace. So, yeah, and we looked at some maps, so it's all good. I hope you enjoyed. This concludes the first live Bible study with me on the book of Galatians. So next time you'll see the finished version of this taped into the Spiral Bible. If you want this, I'll leave the link in the description once all of this uploads and finishes and all that. It takes a while. And then I'm gonna put it on a paper like this and then tape it in there. Or something like that. I haven't decided, but I'm gonna do something to where it's inside this somehow. So yeah. Hope you enjoyed. Hope this helped you figure out how I'm getting the background information and things like that. Like I said, I'm going to do a little bit more research just for funsies on the Galatians, the Gauls, and the Celtics, and all that stuff. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed. Remember, God loves you, and He's always with you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.